want to have children. Do the vaccines have any effect on fertility? Simply put, the answer is no. In fact, we've already seen women who have received one or both doses of the vaccine become pregnant. Now, some concerned people correctly point out that there are no long-term studies specifically on fertility, and that's true. But there is also no indication in the data that's been collected so far, either by the pharmaceutical manufacturer studies or real-world data in millions of vaccinated people, that there is any effect on fertility. As an aside, there are no other vaccines in use with any known effect on fertility. While I completely understand the concern over a new vaccine, people also need to consider the risk of not getting vaccinated. If you become pregnant and are infected with COVID, you are at an increased risk of more severe disease. I already had COVID. Do I still need the vaccine? If you recovered from COVID, you will have some natural immunity against the virus. At this point, we don't know how strong or long-lasting that immunity is. Now, the vaccines have shown a consistent protection, especially against severe COVID, although, to be fair, we don't know precisely how long vaccine immunity lasts either. We believe the benefit of getting vaccinated after a natural infection is that it extends your immunity and likely boosts it higher than your original infection produced. Is one vaccine better than the other? Although the efficacy of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines were around 95% and the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was 72%, the vaccines weren't compared head-to-head directly against each other in the same circumstances, so it's impossible to know if one is more effective than the other. In their individual clinical trials to prepare them for emergency use, they were all found to be extremely effective at preventing severe forms of COVID-19, which is actually the most important reason to be vaccinated. One difference that might appeal to some people: the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is only a single dose. The Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are 2 doses. Are the authorized vaccines safe? Prior to authorization, all of the vaccines underwent rigorous evaluation for safety, and no significant concerns were identified. After authorization, there has been continued monitoring for any adverse effects. A good example of how transparent the process has been is the temporary pause that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine went through to allow the FDA to actually examine a small number of unusual blood clotting problems. There have not been any significant safety concerns after millions of vaccine doses have been administered. The manufacturers and the FDA continue to monitor the safety of the vaccines and have systems in place to identify and investigate any rare complications that might arise. What's wrong with waiting to see how other people react to the vaccine before I get mine? There's nothing wrong with making that choice, but I'd say now that half of the adults in America are vaccinated, it's time to decide. There aren't any unusual concerns that have surfaced, and more importantly, I've actually treated people in the ER who chose to wait, only to end up infected and hospitalized. They all regretted their decision to put off the shot. Give me your elevator pitch for the vaccine. The vaccines have all been well tested and at this point administered to millions of people. They are exceptionally effective at preventing severe disease and death from COVID. Now, I completely understand the reservations that some people have about vaccines, but you should have much bigger reservations about developing COVID-19. The vaccines have been shown to be safe compared to an infection with COVID-19 that's potentially deadly and appears to cause long-term damage in many people. To me, the choice seems reasonably clear. What are the vaccine's side effects? You should feel comfortable about any medication you take, so you should also be aware of the potential side effects. Some people don't react to the COVID vaccines at all. Others experience a variety of side effects. The most common side effects include a fever, muscle soreness, headache, nausea, fatigue, redness, or a sore arm where they got the shot. The symptoms generally go away within a day. If we're going to need a booster shot, why not just wait so I only need to do it once? Right now, we don't know when or even if a booster shot will even be necessary. You could be waiting a very long time before that recommendation comes. And while I do completely understand why someone might think putting it off sounds like a good idea, every day that a person remains unvaccinated is another day they could become needlessly infected and risk long-term problems from COVID. The vaccines were developed so quickly, how do we know they got it right? There's no doubt the warp speed part of the operation went well, but that's not because anyone skipped any steps scientifically. It's because we threw an enormous amount of money and resources at the problem and also removed the regulatory red tape that would have slowed the process without benefiting safety or efficacy. It is true that compared to many traditional vaccines, the technology behind these vaccines can be considered new, but mRNA vaccine technology has been in development for the past 30 years. How do we know there won't be any long-term side effects from the vaccines? We don't have conclusive proof, and we won't until the vaccines have been in use for much longer. But I would ask the same about becoming infected with COVID. That may also have long-term effects, and there's actually indication that that's the case. Uncertainty about what could happen in the future is natural. What we believe right now is that the long-term risk from COVID is real, and there is no indication that there is any long-term downside to the vaccine. Getting vaccinated protects you and your community. Why haven't any of the vaccines received full FDA approval yet? It's simply an issue of time. Full FDA approval requires at least 6 months of follow-up data. Because it was a priority to get people vaccinated as quickly as safety would allow, an emergency use authorization was granted. But the data collection from the clinical trials has been ongoing, and both Pfizer and Moderna have now applied for a full approval. The companies will continue to submit data to the FDA over the coming weeks as FDA scientists continue an in-depth review. Johnson & Johnson is also expected to apply for a full approval once sufficient data has been collected. Why should I get my healthy teenager vaccinated against COVID? Parents are right to think that teens generally weather a COVID infection without much consequence. Unfortunately, that's not 100% though. Some do become seriously ill and others develop long-haul symptoms. The vaccine is effective at preventing severe illness, and the vaccine will likely protect them now and well into the future, since we expect COVID will become a continuously circulating virus for the rest of their lives. Bigger picture, it helps everyone. Teens are an important driver of spread given the social activities they engage in, and getting them vaccinated reduces everyone's risk.